We are a small lake city. Like like your name. There's a little plug for you, by the way. No, I'm just kidding. I love when I can use the name. But small lake city.
And the more we sat with it, we're like, gosh, let's just not do that. Let's jump in and let's help people that are getting divorced.
Our Instagram grew so quickly.
This isn't like really typical.
Like when you see somebody come out of their trauma, it's so rewarding. Love's not enough. And the next piece is you need to find out why you were there.
Healing and growth is not a destination, it's a journey.
What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Small Lake City Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Nilsson, and have you ever talked with a work buddy about getting the hell out of there and starting your own business instead? Well, I know two people that did and started their own amazing relationship consultancy. This week's guests are Tiffany and Kierstyn, the founders of Relationship Recovery. Now, their consulting is about people, especially in a hard time of life, finding themselves right before, during, and after a divorce. But also, there's a lot of takeaways for a lot of relationships in general and how to improve a lot of that. I talk a lot about my own personal divorce, the process I went through, and how people finding themselves in similar situations can approach it in the best way possible. I really love talking with them, and I know that I'm not the only one that's going to enjoy this topic. So check it out. Enjoy the conversation with me, Kierstyn, and Tiffany, and I will see you on the other side. Enjoy.
It's one of those things.
But yeah, I mean, like kind of like you guys were talking about, I mean, two very different people.
Totally. Which
makes, I mean, especially a podcast that much better, because last thing you want to do is have two same people talking about the same things, agreeing on everything.
Right.
Yeah.
No different
different opinions
and then you look at Frankie and Jess too, it's like, oh, you two are very different people in so many different ways.
They're very different, and their audience is very interesting. Like they are devout. Like we got like 5 clients in the last little bit that came from just that podcast.
Yeah.
But they trust them beyond. Like I would love to see what iHeart lost with them switching.
Oh yeah.
I wish I could see the stat because it's so interesting.
Yeah. Talked to a couple people kind of about it, but
I tried to listen to the new host.
Well, John and Chantel beat them out. That's how some of the drama came out, and we kind of know them too.
Yeah, but I listened to them, and it's just so not the same.
Yeah.
It's like, no. And I don't even listen to the radio anymore because I listen to the podcast or, a podcast.
Radio's kind of...
Like I've had my car for 3 years now, and I haven't turned on the radio once. Like someone asked, like I got in someone's car and they turned on the radio. I'm like, hey, psychopath.
Are you gonna murder me?
We solved this. But good for you. Like, like sure, do whatever you want to, but it is fun to see how things have changed. And like one thing I love talking to people about who have podcasts is like the reason you have a podcast.
Sure.
Like my sister's boyfriend who runs what's the new name for it? It used to be O2 Utah, and now it is something I'll put in later. But it's all about, improving air quality in our environment in Utah. And he had a podcast, but he's like, the reason I did that is to get access to like thought experts, to talk to them and get their attention, not necessarily to grow anything, but just be like, hey, you want to come share your opinions in a mic? And then like Stuart Anderson, who is the like quote captain of Mi Duele, the bike club. Like the reason they have a podcast is so if someone's like, oh, I kind of want to join, they're like, cool, like, go see what people did it, go see who's here and go from there. So, and with you guys, it's like, like you have a business that you run of relationship consulting and helping people transition and to a different time of life, which we'll talk about. I'm actually really excited to talk about that. But it's always interesting for me to hear people like strategically, like what are you doing and why? And it's all over the place.
Yeah.
I love that.
I think for us, the reason we started the Relationship Recovery podcast was solely because our Instagram grew so quickly that like through just like quote cards and then reels came out, right?
Yeah.
And stories. We sound really old. We've been doing that. Like,
the social media changed from the pictures.
Remember the swipe up?
Yeah.
The 10K? That was a big deal, guys. Actually, I think I got robbed. I think it should still be. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But it was just like 10-second moments, and that's not enough to kind of explain and relationship trauma so in depth. And so we wanted to have more of a conversation, and it was so funny, we just kept getting clients and they're like, oh, you do this and you talk about that, and they just didn't realize how deep it was. They were just kind of coming in because like, what's a narcissist? And like now it's like Instagram has it and TikTok, it's like that's all there is. It's just it's narcissism. But But it kind of started there. And then we wanted to talk a lot. It's so much deeper than that. And it's about you. And there was just such a conversation to be had. And it just made it so Tiffany and I could have deeper conversations.
Right. Well, and I think it helps people to get to know you too, because they don't get to know you on your social media or through a 15-second video at all.
And that's kind of what we were finding is people just didn't know who we were. And so from a business standpoint, it opens up these doors where, especially if you're selling like a service or you are the product, I don't know how I honestly am a huge advocate for podcasts, and it's, video's huge. YouTube, like there's a reason why those long form media sources work for businesses. But I think especially lately, a lot of our clientele comes from the podcast.
Totally. Because and I love it. And we've reached this time in the world where there's obviously an appetite for short form content. I mean, TikTok is what it is. Instagram is what it is. YouTube Shorts are what they are. But at the same time, and like opposite end of the pendulum swing, like people love long form content in the particular reasons that it's there. Yeah. And it's, especially, in one topic I hate to talk about, but it's the most relevant is like with politics, right? I mean, like before you had these debates, people would dodge questions, they would do whatever. And then now it's like, all right, we're here for 2 hours to talk. And if you're not going to answer something, then I can just say that doesn't work. And so I'd like that kind of there's a place for both. And especially, to your point, Kierstyn, that that's also my sister's name. Great name.
Oh, thanks.
But it really puts another light on the strategic lens of how do you use these things? Because most business owners have some sort of social media exposure, but it's like, how much is that utilized? How much are you actually actively trying? Does it just outsource to some consultancy that just puts it on a content calendar, schedules it and goes? Right. And so it's fun to see the people who adapt with the times and really like lean into the things as they come.
And we actually learned a great lesson about social media in the last little bit. So over the last 10 years, we spent a lot of time becoming popular on mostly Instagram. In fact, popular enough on Instagram that TikTok approached us. We weren't trying to go over there. They approached us and asked us to be a learn on TikTok creator. Yeah. And so that's the only reason we added TikTok. And, we started talking about YouTube just because we had a consultant company that really pushed us there for a little bit. And anyways, we spent all this time building Instagram. And then about 3 months ago, we were like, we're kind of burnt out on it. And we didn't like that we kept feeling like we have to post a certain thing. So we decided to take a step back. And it was one of the healthiest things. We left the podcast alone and our clientele and the rest of our business fine. But I think it was really healthy for us to go, this doesn't burn down if we're not a slave to short term, especially Instagram. Yeah. And I love Instagram. They don't it's been great. It's where most of our businesses come. Like I said, other than the podcast, it drives to it and it's an important piece. But it's been a good lesson for us to take that break.
Yeah, because it's just so easy to get burned out day after day, posting, doing reels. It's a lot of work to create that content.
And we manage it ourselves. We're not sending it out. It's one of us always. And, that writes everything and creates all those reels and all that content. And it's for 2 seconds. And then when something fails, it's like, oh my gosh, you just rejected me as a human.
You're always hustling for your
I don't want
worth.
to take this personally, but why?
Can we talk about this? Do you want to hop on? And so anyways, we just found that it was really healthy for us to look at it that way and to kind of take the step back and be like, oh no, our business exists. Our boat floats without it, because there's kind of this illusion. Yeah. And we realized we did a really good job at building an influence, which is great. But at the end of the day, that's not what our business is. There's so much more.
So much deeper than that.
And that's why we've really enjoyed the podcast, actually, because it is deeper.
Yeah. Because so there was a point where, I was laid off from my last job. And because I had my job, which is obviously, I like money and having a lifestyle that I want to have. But then I have this podcast that's driving so much more of my curiosity and interest. It was hard for me to just be like, I don't look at it. And I don't pay. No, focus over here. And next thing I know, I'm like, all right, fine. But it was fun when I did get laid off. I never thought I'd say that before. But because again, everything that was in my head of if I had more time, I'd do this. Or that would be good, but just don't have the bandwidth. And all of a sudden it's all right, buckle up, buttercup. You said you were going to do this if you had time. And so I don't know, with me and Instagram, it's been an interesting relationship because I see people, get, quote, addicted, unquote, spend way too much time. And it's just this mental health spiral. Totally. But for me, it's been this additional creative outlet where my brain just kind of thinks in memes and social media a lot of the time. Really? And so it's just I'll be laying there oh, wait, hold on. And the next thing I know, I'm like, and schedule, like, put this in drafts. We'll see how this goes tomorrow. But,
Sure.
and so it's been fun to kind of just like this like little toy to play with almost. And where I like don't follow. And it's like nice because like I have my personal and my, the podcast account. And it's funny because like, I always send things to each other because that's like my saved.
Oh, I do that too. Tits always sees all my stuff. I'm like, here you go.
I'm like, what is this?
She can always know where my brain's going.
But because of like the podcast account, I don't send too many. It's not like I'm sending memes to friends on like my podcast account.
Right.
Like it is heavily influenced by whatever I'm sending back and forth. So one week it'll be like, here's a CapCut hack, and then it'll be like, here's some relationship advice, and be like, do you want a 6-pack abs before summer? And I'm just like, all right, like pick a lane. But so it's been really fun. But anyway, I could talk about social media, strategy, content, whatever. But I'm excited to have you guys on here because there's a couple topics of Salt Lake that I think are very unique and nuanced that if you're from here, I think you get it from a surface level. And if you're not from here, you kind of see it from afar, and it's like you see the outcomes, but you don't really understand like what's actually going on. And I'm excited to talk about it for a lot of reasons, but obviously, oh my gosh, I just forgot. Kierstyn and Tiffany from Relationship Recovery. I said that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes I don't trust myself whenever I have to remember like key moments.
We're really big on the.
No.
Yes.
Well, it's like the same thing when people are like, I went to Nordstrom's the other day. I was like, there's no S on there. It's Nordstrom.
Yeah,
That's
you're like,
right.
You're adding too much. Yeah.
But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But I'm excited to talk to you guys today for that. But I mean, before we get started, I'd love to hear kind of what led up to you two, I mean, tag teaming, building this business, and kind of go into more of the nuance of what's happening in Salt Lake. So maybe start with Tiffany and a little background and how you met up with Kierstyn.
Okay, so a little background there is Kierstyn and I used to work at a place together. I think we can name the place.
Yeah, sure.
It's Systemic Formulas. So
they're a Utah company too.
Okay.
They're awesome.
Mm-hmm. And I had just gone through a divorce when I got hired there. And then you got hired maybe a year later. I think I had been there about a year. And it was just this place that was really safe for me to be. I had a lot of support there. I felt safe physically, mentally, emotionally. The way they supported was really, really great. And then Kierstyn got there about a year later. And one day she came into my office and she said, you know, I know you're going through divorce. And she's like, I'm just starting to go through a divorce. And so we really just were a really good support for each other. I was just a tiny bit ahead, so I had some different tools that I was able to pass on to her. So we, chatted for a while that way. But what she really came to me for was, she said, let's start an event and a marketing company, because she was in marketing and I was in events and it made sense. And so we're like, yes, let's do that. And then one day when we're successful, we should do something that helps women that are getting divorced or people that are getting divorced. And the more we sat with it, we're like, gosh, let's just not do that. Let's jump in and let's help people that are getting divorced, because, I wish I would have had the tools that we give to people now back then, right? Yeah. There weren't a lot of tools and a lot of availability for like support groups, and Instagram was new and all that kind of stuff. So there weren't accounts like ours. So we jumped in and we held an event at the Salt Lake Hardware. Building. Yeah. And we had about 100 people there, and Colin Karchner, he's since passed away, but he was our MC, and it was phenomenal. And it started from there, and it started from our Instagram page. But that's how we got together. And ironically, we do a lot of events, and obviously we do a lot of marketing. So
it all mattered. Like it was kind of interesting just to kind of see how, like I always joke, I'm like, if we wanted to burn this down, we couldn't, even if we wanted to. Like it's just everything kind of worked out the way it was supposed to. And like how she said, I thought we were going to start this event business, and then we were going to have this nonprofit, and because I didn't really think like we could do something that would help people and make money, and we had to kind of work through our own, like what money means and how it has energy. And we would give stuff away at first because we were like, oh, we just want to help people, but it was so funny, we robbed them in a way, in my opinion, because they didn't show up for themselves. Like money has sacrifice. And so making it a business, we actually helped more people because they showed up, they took it seriously. Like it was a sacrifice to do their work. It's just kind of like when you have like a trainer in the gym, you show up better when you have somebody that's holding you accountable. And so we just noticed that. And we started to have a better relationship with, money and paying for people paying us. And then we added these certifications, and now we've added even more. And it's really evolved and grown into a really cool thing. But yeah, it all started because I went to an event, and it was Infusionsoft at the time. I guess it's still,
I think it's
Keep
still,
or something.
it's
I don't
Keep.
know.
Yeah, it's Keep.
Anyways, we went to, and there were there was like thousands of small businesses. And every time I talked to somebody, they were doing something like random and cool.
Yeah.
And I came back and I told Tiff, I'm like, let's just do the relationship recovery. Like, let's forget this event business that everybody has. Let's just go for it. And it took off. I remember we got our first client. We were sitting in Best Buy's parking lot on our
20%?
lunch break. Yeah. We're like, okay, awesome. It was crazy. It just kind of built from there.
Yeah, and we used to only coach together. That's how we started. We thought that was unique because it would give somebody my perspective and her perspective. And we don't do that anymore. We coach separately. Yeah. But we just grew enough that it didn't make a whole lot of sense to do that. And we became better coaches. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We didn't need to lean on each other so much. So
now I think sometimes it's bad if
I know.
we've tried to get, because it's almost like, why are both of us on here? There's one that somebody does, and anyways, and then we started doing courses, and we wanted to help more people. We tried an app. There's so many different avenues that we've gone down, and it's, owning a small business, it's trial and error, and burned money and made money and, all the things.
I have multiple stories for all of those things. But I actually love your process of how you came to do it, because it reminds me a lot of mine. Working in corporate America, I was like, well, I don't think this is what we want to be doing forever. This doesn't give me the energy that I want it to. Right. But then I just had this itch of something I needed to be doing. And it was always, do I want to start a business? Tried a couple things, talked to a couple people. I was like, nah, this isn't it. And then I was listening to a lot of interview podcasts, and I was like, this is fun. Because my job at the time was interviewing, doing market research, focus groups, in-depth interviews professionally. Mm. And so I'm like, I know how to talk to people. I know how to go in with go into a conversation wanting to get something out and do it. But then I'm also a social person who loves to connect with people. So I was like, let's do what if I did it? And if I did, what would I do? And I'm like, well, there's so much going on in Salt Lake. Nobody really knows what's going on. If I did, what would the outline look like? What would the guest list look like? Until it's fork in the road, do it or don't. And didn't. But then went on a 6-month road trip in a van, seeing if I wanted to live somewhere else, came back and realized Salt Lake was the place to be. So it's nice, because I always get weirded out when someone's like, all right, so I'm trying to start a podcast, but I don't know what I'm going to do or what motivates me. I'm like, okay, maybe let's flip it a little bit. But I think it's a common one. And especially as you two look at what you were trying to accomplish, I feel like and it's great to see that you have this experience professionally of marketing and events, mm-hmm. that you're both like, listen, I don't want to be here anymore. We're besties. We're in this together, and we're out of here together.
Right. And it was just time. It was and some of it naturally happened anyways. I wanted to be with my kids more. That was a huge component why I left that company at the time. And then things kind of naturally continued to build, and the relationship recovery kind of started to build on the background. There was even a moment where I was like, I don't know if I want to, we kind of paused, and I was like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. And like I said, it just kept, the mission was, it's meant to be. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to explain it. Like I said, if we wanted to, we've tried to burn it down by accident and not on purpose, and it never does. And I just think it's such a needed piece, and it's what we're called to do. And when we kind of surrendered to that of what we felt called to do, it works out. And, some of it, we've learned a lot of patience. We kind of had that hustle culture a little bit at first, because that's what everybody was talking about. We were listening to Gary Vee. We were listening to, all these other people, and we really liked Brendan Burchard, and, that was it. You were hustling, and then everybody burned out. And
also,
and then
COVID
I think some of their
happened.
stuff. Oh yeah, COVID. Mm-hmm. COVID was a huge part of our business.
It was a
too.
big part.
Oh yeah, everybody got divorced when COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah. You block yourself with people, you find out who they are real quick. And we're not just talking abuse, but a lot of people were like, "Oh, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
We cannot do this." And it's true. I think sometimes people we partner with domestic, FADV here in Utah and some others, and we love them, and we're all about domestic violence awareness, and we deal with a lot of emotional abuse and things like that. But getting divorced in general is traumatic. And other relationships are traumatic. Like we have people that come in for friendships, family relationships, work relationships, like all sorts of relationships. One of the number one things that as a human being we ever create is relationships. So when it doesn't go well, or you start having these toxic trends because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything, there's so many different, anyways, so we have lots of different conversations in different ways.
Right. And I think, really at the end of the day, it's rebuilding that relationship with yourself. And that's the most important piece. So everybody gets an opportunity to be in some sort of relationship.
Yep. And we always lead back there. The relationship recovery isn't about the other person, but that's what you're focused on, because that's all you can see, because typically you've lost yourself in that other person. And so when they're looking for help, they're like, what do I do about this? What do I do about this person? What does this mean? Who are they? Like, do they have a diagnosis? Do they not have a diagnosis? Like, and you're trying to figure it out, like why things fell off. But once we can kind of center people there, then we go to what actually you can't control.
Oh yeah. And no one can get to know you better than the extent that you know yourself.
100%.
And so much of relationships, again, whether it be romantic, family, professional, friend, they all come back to the same like principles of communication, showing up, trust, respect. And so if you can have these skills to learn, it's like, okay, cool. Like whether it's your spouse or your shitty boss or whoever it is, like it's the same sort of tools.
Absolutely.
My different goals and outcomes and expectations, but at the end of the day, a lot of it can be applied in so many different directions.
Yeah.
And especially, divorce in general. Like, I love what you're talking about, how it's such a, I think there's a quote somewhere where it's like the only thing harder than like divorce is like a child death or something. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna look that one up.
I think they've done some, they did some polls and things like that.
Because you think about it, and you're grieving and you're mourning somebody that's actually still alive. That's even a whole different, ball game over there, is that person's still alive, so you have to deal with that aspect of it too, right? So it's hard.
And you mourn what you thought it was going to be.
Yes.
It's not actually typically who they are. It's you mourn your expectation of what the relationship was going to be. And that's really hard to let go of. And then you create, like if you're co-parenting, for example, like we'll see people create this, the marriage didn't work out, but co-parenting will work out.
We still have to do, we're in this in a different way.
We're going to romanticize what co-parenting is going to look like. And then they have to let go of that. And there's just so many things where you really have to learn how to accept what you can control and who they are, and accept who they are too and what it is.
And I think bringing it back to, that fantasy of what you thought it was supposed to be, sometimes when we're in a relationship with somebody that has really toxic traits or has some form of narcissism, sometimes you get sold what that relationship was supposed to be. And so it's really hard to unravel from that and get back to yourself and realize that it was never going to be that in the first place. And, to keep that ruminating about that more in check.
Yeah. Especially with, I like what you thought it was going to be, because it wasn't what it was, or else it wouldn't be what it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And because like, even with me, like, if anyone's been listening to the podcast long enough, you can probably allude that I'm divorced, but I've never like come out and said it. And, two things on that before we go further. Number one, I love that your guys' relationship in supporting people with divorce, because I remember, when someone's like, there's been a lot of times now, because I'm divorced for 2.5, 3 years now. And it's interesting, like people come up to me like, oh, by the way, I'm going through a divorce. I'm like, congratulations. No good marriage ends in divorce.
Right.
And then also, I'm not going to say it works 100% of the time, but about 95% of the time, everyone's like, thank you. But then it's fun because you'll see these people and it's like, oh, you don't even know what's about to hit you in the face. Like, I know you're excited to be out of it, but there's a road. Yeah. It's going to get dark for a minute, but you'll be back, and you'll be back with who you were actually supposed to be, not who you were in that relationship. Mm-hmm. And so there's so many times where, I'll meet someone, they say this, like, oh, like, let's just sit there and talk with them about it, because it's such a unique experience that not a lot of other people can understand. They could be your best friend, family, whatever, but if they've never gone through it, it's good to listen and be there, but it's a whole different experience.
Yeah. It is. It's one of those things. It's kind of like its own little club. You don't understand it unless you've gone through it. It's really hard for people, and your heart breaks for people that are kind of alone in it. And how you're kind of talking about a Utah nuance, like when we started the relationship recovery, mind you, we're now an international company. Mm-hmm. We thought we were starting a Utah company because we were like, Utah's so unique, and there's the culture aspect around it and how divorce is treated here. And a lot of I got divorced at 22 in Utah. And, most people are like on their third kid. No, I'm just kidding. But it was a lot of shame around being divorced. And so like with the religion here, there was also a component of that weighed in. And like, there's so many different pieces that plays in divorce, especially in Utah. But also it's kind of funny. The more that we've gone international, we're not that different in some ways too. There's some funky nuances, but like I'll talk to somebody in Canada. Like I had a client in Canada. She was devout Jewish, very similar. Like if you told me she was in Salt Lake and switched the religion, it would have been the same. Now, and it's not just religion. Like we have people on in New York City where it's more about like status and things like that. And it sounds very similar. So it's just all these different extra components. I think they weigh in. It was very interesting. It was like, we are a small lake city, like like your name. There's a little plug for you, by the way. No, I'm just kidding. I love when I can use the name, but small lake city, but we're also not that different in some ways too. I think sometimes we're like, oh, we're the bubble and,
it's like whatever that social structure is, it's still a social structure. And a lot of those feelings are the same.
Yeah. I do think though, I got divorced when I was 42 and I do think that religion plays an aspect in it because I think I was kind of held into my marriage a lot longer than I would have been had I not had kind of the pressure of you don't break your family up, you need to stay together and a lot of, pressure like that from religious leaders. And so I do think it's a little unique in that way.
Yeah. And I actually had the opposite. So at the time I was pretty, I went to the bishop and I did the whole thing and went through it that way. And I was lucky because I had just really awesome people that supported. And he's like, and I know there's a lot of pressure about like staying together and that does create its own unique culture piece. I totally can see what you're talking about. But it was funny. He was kind of like, "Oh, thank goodness that's what you're doing." He's so like, awesome. He's like, I 100% support that. And kind of gave me a lot of support that way. So it is interesting, but
I just wasn't quite that lucky and had a leader that, said, I think you need to stay and work it out. And I just
like, cool. I'm going to go back to banging my head against the wall again. Thanks for the quick break.
Right.
So, well, and there's just so many things where it is funny. And
and
that's a whole other ball game.
Because like in my family, so my mom's divorced, my sister's divorced, and I was number 3. And so it was nice to like have seen it and be like, oh, okay, like I generally see how this goes, especially with my sister, because like she wasn't her complete self when she was married. And then she got divorced. And all of a sudden, like my sister that I remember started to come back because there wasn't this burden of a relationship on her. Well, not just a relationship, but like being in a bad relationship, it taxes you more than you know, and you don't even know until you're out of it.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I like what you were talking about, Kierstyn, about kind of like there's a lot of us that go through, hard times, breakups, divorces, where it's like them, external. But it's also like, hey, like, you got yourself into this situation. Like you signed on the line, you brought them in. And one book I always recommend to anybody going through a divorce or even long-term breakup is Conscious Uncoupling, because it lays out all of these steps of like, hey, listen, like, here's how to process this so this doesn't happen. Here's how you learn. Here's how you look into this. Here's how you make this not a defining moment for you, but a launch pad towards who you're going to be. And because it does become this inflection point that I'm sure both of you can think of great examples on both sides where there's people that just get so trapped in it and can't like escape that. But then on the other side, there's people, it's like, I didn't even know I could be this person, but yet here I am.
Right.
And I'm grateful with my divorce because like we had both left the church before, so there wasn't that complicating aspect to it. But also like our divorce was so amicable because like when I was in the van, I was with her. And so there was like 6 months in a van traveling the country that there are things that we just had kind of pushed under the rug, ignored. And when you're in a 10 by 15 foot box, you start to not be able to hide things anymore. And it essentially just got to the point where like, hey, listen, different values, different beliefs in life, like have a good, like we didn't need attorneys. We just signed on the line. You take yours, I take mine. Co-parent dogs, which is a fun, unique aspect of things.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I always love seeing people's reactions because it's either like, oh, or like, okay. But,
you know what?
If you can do it.
I love that you're talking about this though, because this isn't like really typical. We don't see a whole lot of like people that can do it like this. And I think that's really neat that you were able to take the concept and the ideas in that book and really apply them. Because I think a lot of times we get in this trap of there has to be an affair, or there has to be,
it's like, I call them like the big four or big five.
Abuse.
Yeah. You're just like waiting, like, hit me, please. This makes it so easy.
I waited. I mean, I totally waited. I was like, oh, there's my get out of, like, I'm not even mad that you did that. You know, I'm out. Like that was my get out of jail free card, you know? So it bet. And I
but if you're not happy, there's no reason that you need to stay in a relationship that makes you so unhappy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was my thing. It's like, you look at life, you're like, we got one shot at this. And I mean, depending on your religious belief, but I mean, I guess whatever religious belief, we believe we're going to be here for this.
Yeah.
And again, to just be there for the sake of being there and expecting people to change, someone else to show up, like, it just doesn't quite work like that.
No.
And I remember there was a point, like, again, we're like working through things, trying to have, I mean, we'd had a marriage therapist for like 3 years, and which was great. Like, I always recommend that to everybody before anything gets bad.
100%.
Proactive.
People do it when they're already, like, the relationship's dead.
Yeah.
And that's when people bring in. It's like, no, if you're already dead on the table, you don't bring in somebody.
Yeah. Hey, doctor, we don't know what's going on here. Your dog's dead. Like, I can't do anything.
Sorry.
And so, like, yeah, I mean, obviously get ahead of it, but then also, like, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Because, like, even in that moment where I'm like, hey, I know this isn't working. I know we just keep banging our head against the walls of trying to do things and it's not. And, like, I could see that path. I could see the path of it being like, all right, I guess we're just going to keep doing this until one of us goes into a ridiculous amount of debt, goes into drugs or alcohol, cheats on someone, hits someone, or some other thing I can't think of.
Sure.
And so it's like, you don't have to wait until that moment happens, and who knows how long it could take till it happens. And also, like, it's always interesting because, like, the thing I hear from a lot of people is like, well, I'm staying together for the kids. I'm staying together for the kids, which is like, the kids are always super important, but kids are smart.
Yeah.
And they will put it together better than you ever will. Like, they will know that the relationship is, I mean, when my parents got divorced, I was 9 or 10. I was like, oh, like, their mom and dad are breaking up. I'm like, oh, nice. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I got the get out of jail card from one of the top ones because at the time that's kind of what I thought you had to have.
Yeah.
But I left for my son. Like, there was a very pivotal moment, and, you know, there was kind of it was pretty volatile at the time. And I remember looking in the rearview mirror and seeing his car seat, and I was like, this isn't it. I'm not going to teach him that this is what love is. And from then on, it was just kind of like quickly unraveled right then. And then like I said, the next day somebody knew something and they told me, and I was like, fantastic. So here's my case, you know, and you don't have to wait for the case, but I'm so grateful that I did that for him. And then I was able to do it for myself because my self-esteem at that point was so low. I wasn't valuing myself, because I think that's also why sometimes people don't leave either, is they've totally self-abandoned in the relationship that they're lost. And so then they're like, well, I'm trapped. I'm here. And so I think there's so many different components to it. And everybody's story's kind of different.
Everybody's different. You know, you've got stories, you know, like what you're describing of your own story. You've got people that, you know, sometimes can't leave for financial reasons. They're kind of trapped because of that. Or, you know, sometimes it's just really scary to leave some of those situations. But, you know, there's resources and there's ways to get out if that's, you know, your case. But yeah, everybody's story is different.
And I think we stay in the familiar. Like, my marriage was like 4.5 years, the relationship was like 6, and people would probably downplay it because it started when I was a teen. But I also had some pretty toxic teenage relationships before that. And then if you get real deep into it, there's generational trauma, and it goes on and on and on and on. But like, from paper, it's like my parents were married and they're still married. They've been married for 50 years. So people are like, oh, that's she doesn't have the generational pieces. But like, you go a generation back, you go into like so many different pieces. And we end up in the familiar. There's an epigenetic component. There's what you know. There's there's so many different components to why we stay in a relationship too, and how you got there. Yeah. You will always choose the familiar, always. So you have to work with that piece, and that's what we do too. Like, we identify, why are you comfortable in this? Why are you repeating these same trends? Because if you look at somebody's relationship, typically their friends look like that, their bosses look like that, they're not comfortable with a healthy relationship in any relationship sense.
I mean, especially when again, like with your example, Kierstyn, that it's so early in life, and like you're like, well, I mean, and even in my marriage, yeah, but also just in dating in general, like one taboo I like always get weirded out by people is like, because I'll ask, like, if I'm dating someone or like trying to get to know someone, like, tell me about your past relationships. What were those like? And they're like, most people don't want to know about this. They get like uncomfortable or jealous. I'm like, listen, if I'm hiring someone for a job, I want to know what you learned from the other jobs, and if you're a good employee or if you're a bad employee that's trying to find another place to go. Yeah. And so I think there's that part of it. But then, I mean, the devil you know or the devil you don't, it's will always keep us wherever we are, even if, I mean, relationship, work, no matter that might be. And so it's interesting to see how people get there. Because like one thing I've been thinking a lot about recently is, because again, we like people try to be in the situation while evaluating the situation and figuring out if this is the right thing for them. When in reality, it's really hard to do that all in the moment because you have to be part of it while like trying to like distance yourself from it. And like, I mean, in my experience with people, it's like usually when there's a doubt or like they kind of know, it's like you're just deferring a decision and like it's time like to make one. But then it's interesting when you can get away from it physically, mentally, emotionally, depending on kind of the situation that you're in. It's amazing the amount of like your brain and your life and just like energy in general that you get back, because you don't realize how much you just sit there and think about like, okay, I have to go home and then I have to do this. And hopefully we don't have to talk about this again. And I'm so sick, I'm tired from work. Right. And you just don't realize how much of like your brain is just spent thinking about this. And then all of a sudden, I mean, it takes time. And especially thinking about like a divorce where you really have to like unplug all of these things and rewire so many things so it's not thinking about it anymore. But then all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe we should start our own business. Maybe we should start a podcast. Maybe we should do that garden we've always talked about. Maybe it is time to catch up with my friends. And there's like this potential of you that's there. And it's not even just saying like your partner's taking away from that potential, but because you're so much more worried and thinking about so many other things, your aptitude to doing great things only goes up when you leave it. And so it's fun to see people, because again, you like, bad relationship you're feeling about here, you get out of it, you're like, I'm out. And then you're like, oh, what does life look like now? I used to think I knew exactly what my life looked like, and now I have no idea, and nothing's promised me anymore. And then you go down, and then all of a sudden you get like back up and soar. And I love when I get to see people like hit their stride, they're doing their thing, and like it definitely takes work and intentionality to get there. But when they do, I mean, I don't have to tell you both, you're probably like, listen, it's the best part of my job is I get to see people.
It is. It really is. Like when you see somebody come out of their trauma, it's so rewarding. Like, and it's so traumatic. Like, and when they finally can see their power and who they are, and they're not so lost in the shame. Because like people come in and like the main thing they say is, I don't trust myself. I feel stuck. I don't know who I am. I don't know if I'm right. I don't, I'm broken. Nobody's going to want me. Like, it's just such a shame cycle. And it's amazing to watch when somebody can find their worth and they reconnect to themselves and they know who they are. And even like you said, like, even if they don't have all the answers and they get a take off, it's such a catalyst. I watch it be people's catalysts all the time.
And I feel like you really see them like just reclaim themselves and reclaim their power and all the things that they'd lost within that relationship, and they get it back. And I mean, people say all the time, I'll see pictures of myself, from a few years back, when I was in that relationship, and I don't even look like the same person anymore. I look like a totally different person.
Because I do love that confidence piece. Because I mean, people, especially, I'd say, you can agree or disagree with me and I'll take it back. But like, I feel like it's so much more like on the female side of feeling so defeated. And so, because there's a lot more social aspects to it, I think, for women than men, maybe not.
I'm going to argue
You can disagree with me. You can tell me I'm dumbass.
I think it's more socially acceptable for women to feel that way.
Yes. That's
I think
a good point.
Men, we have male clients, but I would say that there's a lot of men that don't get help because it's not socially acceptable for them to feel that way. It's way more acceptable for women. And I don't think we create enough space for men to have that. And I love working with the men that I work with because they haven't had anyone make that safe space for them to be, to have that emotionality.
Yeah. And they feel seen and heard and all the things that they don't feel because society tells them to be tough. And
there's nuances to it. A component I see a lot is like they feel used for their stability, like financial piece. They're like, oh, my value only comes through what I can provide. And but they're like, but I need the emotional support and I need to feel seen and I need to know, like, it's very interesting, but I run into that a lot with my male clients. Another one is like, if they were cheated on, it's very interesting too. Like that it's not socially acceptable for a man to be like have low self-esteem about his physical looks sometimes, I feel like. And so like I'll have these discussions like, well, what do I bring? Like, why wouldn't they just go out and cheat on me again? Or, you know, it's so interesting to see some of the different components. Very similar, but there is something for a male client that's a little different.
Right. And I know that it's becoming more acceptable because we started out and we were just solely female.
And we were so pink.
We were very pink. We actually had a male client tell us that we were way too pink.
It's like, listen.
Yeah. He's like, you got to get a little different color scheme going there. But yeah, it's nice to see that starting to change a little bit and for us to, you know, be able to help men too.
And I can't imagine of like, again, let's say I'm thrown into a, quote, typical like divorce situation and I'm a man who hasn't gone through therapy, hasn't gone through that process, and then just be hit like with a baseball bat with all of this. And now you have to think about all of this self-worth and projections and this anxiety and this voice inside of your head without the tools to do it. And like thankfully, like I was someone in my youth, my mom prioritized therapy for, and then when I was going through my faith crisis in my late 20s, like that was a big therapy moment for me. And even when I kicked off like what me and my ex did was reassess the marriage. Like what, pulse check, what's going on? Like my coverage for my old therapist had stopped, so I get a new therapist, shout out Haley. And it was like, hey, not to like dump this on you, but like, here you go, you know? But it was nice to have her. And like, and especially when we got to the point, like, let's see, probably like a year and a half after I first met with her, which was like a month before I actually like physically separated from my ex-wife. And like, we just like, essentially just became us talking. She's like, Eric, these are really expensive conversations for you. You're good. Like text me when you need to, and we can set up a time, but like, you're good.
Yeah.
And like, one thing I want to come back to that you alluded to is this like social stigma of divorce. Cause I remember when I was first getting divorced, I'm like, oh my God, no one's going to look at me serious. It's always going to be, so why are you divorced? What's wrong with you? Are you broken? Blah, blah, blah. But ironically, I have never, well, I don't know if it's ironic, but I've never had a conversation on a date or talking to someone where it's like, oh yeah, I'm divorced. And it's like, what? Like, hold on, pause. Let's go back, talk about this. If anything, it's like, oh yeah, me too. Anyway, like moving on.
Yeah.
Because then like, you know that like, I mean, just like any subpopulation of any group of people, there's going to be good and bad eggs.
Sure.
And like with a lot of people that I've talked to are divorced, I'm like, oh, never mind. Like there's a reason you guys got divorced. And I'm like 60% sure it was you. And I'm sure enough that I probably don't want to go on a second date with you or something like that.
Right.
And so it's nice to have, again, like this culture and like this, geography where there are a lot of people that go through a lot of divorce, and especially with, the religious component and social component of it, where, and curious to get your guys' take on this, because I think you would agree, but still want to hear your take on it. But when you have so many people, you have this society where people get married so young because of, the LDS church, but then also it pulls in people from everywhere else because it's so socially bound that people in general just get married younger. But then all of a sudden we have, 2019, 2020, and all of a sudden people start leaving the church a lot.
Right.
And all of a sudden people are like, whoa, hold on. One of the key criteria for us getting married and starting this relationship was this thing that's not there anymore.
Yeah.
And now I'm figuring out who I actually am and what I want without all these parameters in place. And actually, I think I'm good now. Like we're good. And so it's I'll champion people for that. Because again, when you go from, the perception of, the LDS faith of we're going to be together forever, our families are forever, everything is in this context. And all of a sudden you have to reel it in and be like, okay, now everything's finite. And we only have so much time to deal with the rest of our lives. And like, I don't know if this is the one I want to do it with.
Yeah. I think too, with that comes this component of people don't do enough work, like outside of just having that, like all the religious component that you just talked about. Like once, we went through the temple, we're sealed forever. So now everything's going to work out because we checked the boxes kind of thing. And then there's no work on the relationship at all. And then they don't have any other foundation outside of that. So when you rip somebody's foundation like that, I don't care what it is, whether it's religion or anything like that, anything else, and there's nothing else in that relationship holding it together. And I think there's components where you're talking about, like they figure out, oh, well, I was just kind of checking the box and you were part of the box and we actually don't have anything in common outside of the church. So see ya. That's one version of it. But I also think they just don't have a relationship like they don't have a foundation out of it.
Yeah.
And like my husband and I, we were married in the church. We took time out. We kind of are, you know, we've been in different places and we have very different outlooks about it now. And, but we did a lot of work on our relationship.
Yeah.
One of the things I pride myself on more than anything else is my marriage with my husband now, because I make it a priority and we have there's a foundation there besides just, you know, religious aspects or other things. And there's nothing, and if you're listening and you're part of that religion, I'm not trying to like downplay. If that's important to you, great, like good for you. But there has to be more than that. There has to be willingness and awareness of things. And you're not always going to be perfect. And just because there's this blessing of that you're going to be together forever, that everything's going to work out perfectly, and people aren't, I mean, you're working with two imperfect people.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as this perfect relationship. And I think people kind of go into it that way. And how you were talking about youth, man, you don't know what life is till your frontal lobe's not even closed. And even then, I don't know about you, but I still don't know everything.
If I had to sit in a room with my 21-year-old self, we would instantly want to fight each other.
I know,
like,
right?
We would hate each other.
Yes.
You just grow so much, and you have to grow with that partner too.
Yes.
Because when you choose a life partner, you have to grow together. If you grow too far apart, it causes, you know, I remember a therapist friends of ours, he actually said, he goes, I wish I could have people sign when they start therapy that the number one thing that they're going to risk is the partnership that they have or the relationships they have. Because when you grow, that person started in that relationship with you in this like not healthier growing place. And that person might not like that you're changing because that's not who they signed up for. And so it's always like a rubber band effect. It might break, or they might shoot up to meet you, but it's tough. When you choose to work on yourself, there's a lot of components there. And that's why that foundation has to be there outside of other things, in my opinion. Yeah. That's my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say it's a universal principle in general. I mean, even thinking about, to set the context for that. So I believe in any relationship, it's really 3 relationships. It's my relationship with myself, it's my partner's relationship with themselves, and our relationship together. All of those 3 things have to be respected in their own form. Uh-huh. But then also when it comes back to bringing everything back together, and it's like one thing I believe in is like you never put all of your eggs in one basket, no matter what it is in life. And so we're just going to talk about all of my fun little traumatic experiences in life today. So I remember when I lived in Seattle, when I was just out of school, graduated 2 years prior, got laid off from a job. And that job was my life. It took my foundation from under me. I didn't have anything else because I sacrificed everything else I enjoyed in my life, and I was a wreck. Fast forward to 2020, I get laid off again. And at that point, I was like, there's other things in my life. I had a community, I had hobbies, I had some other things I was doing. So I was like, oh, okay. And like, also it's COVID, so I can't I know why it happened, but like it sucked. And there's definitely a point where I'm like, oh, can I do this? Am I worth it? Blah, blah, blah. But then this most recent time, I remember because I found out like the week before that I was essentially going to get laid off. And I was like, oh, okay, like makes sense. And like kind of was already looking, but I get laid off. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm so grateful I have the podcast because I'm just going to put all my energy into that. And like I was able to approach so much more from this clear mental headspace because my foundation wasn't cut out from under me. Mm-hmm. And so it's like the only thing I had in life wasn't gone anymore, but like one of like the 8 octopus legs of my life got cut off. So, I mean, that's not going to change my life. Right. And then because I was because I had put the foundation in place and done the work, I was confident in myself that I knew I'm like, hey, if I do the right things, it's going to work out, which puts me in a good headspace to have success. And then it eventually kind of all did how I wanted it to. And so in a similar way, I would hypothesize and think like with a relationship, like if you and your significant other only have one thing together that's holding everything there, I mean, I imagine, I don't know, I've been thinking about the movie Hercules recently, the animated.
Yes,
great
movie.
I mean, it's like when the witches, I can't even think of their names, but they're like holding the thread and they just snip and the person dies and they go to hell, or Hades. Similarly, like if you have one string and it gets cut, then there's nothing connecting there anymore. But if there's multiple things, then what a great strength to have. Yeah. I mean, especially if it can be so many things too. It can be a hobby. It can be other friend groups. It can be a community. It can be so many things.
Yeah. Yeah. And love's not enough. Having that one like thing isn't enough. That string, like Hercules, that's not enough. And you have to have so many different components. And that's why like we have a course called Should I Stay or Should I Go? And a piece to that is like, do you have the same goals? Do you have, the same values? Are you guys in line in so many different ways? We don't just go, oh, do you love them?
You do? Cool. Okay. I didn't want to meet with you anymore. So yeah. Just go love. And like on that note, actually, because so here's my hypothesis of like the millennial generation and why we have like, do you love him? It's all about love. Love is all you need. Is because we were all raised with rom-coms in the early 2000s.
Yeah. I
And
did a
Disney
podcast
shows.
about this. One Tree Hill on its own totally screwed me up.
Yeah.
Well, because I think it was the year I got divorced. I just went through, because I was raised by two sisters and a single mom during like my teenage years, which was in the early 2000s. So all I watched was rom-coms.
100%.
I mean, like Just Married, 10 Things I Hate About You, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Oh, so many good
always
ones.
somebody
Sweet
being
Home Alabama.
toxic.
Well, it's the same pattern because I have ADHD and I can always recognize patterns, but it would be, here's this powerful person, and they are given this weird moment where they get to start this relationship that's going against all odds until they find out that they actually like each other. Oh no, something happens, but one person does one huge gesture and everything gets forgotten about. And so what do we do in our lives today? It's like, I need you to show up more. Babe, what do you want me to do to show up? Do you want me to go out with your friends? Do you want me to talk to your family more? I'll do it. It's like, no, I just want you to like listen to me and tell me that you love me. Like it's like, I don't need this big thing. I just need some sort of consistency and security. Like, And so I've been thinking a lot about that recently.
No, I 100%. Like I'm always like, see, I'm like, if there was the bad boy, you were supposed to be with the bad boy. And no matter what they did, they would become good though. Like you just accept all the bad stuff and you need to be popular and all of your value comes through whoever you're with. And,
they just push you to romanticize everything,
oh,
right?
100%. Love bombing. Actually, that's where all love bombers come from. Mm-hmm. Yep. You just said it.
Agree.
It comes from rom-coms.
Yeah. I've learned a lot about relationships post-divorce because again, like it also depends on how long you were divorced. Like what you show up as again in your dating self is really just like that person from before and your like expectation of it. Yeah. And so like I was the person who'd always be like, oh, good first day. Like, good morning. How's life? Like just texting all the time and then being like, oh, what are you up to this week? Oh, you're busy you're not busy that day. I'm not. I can move some things around. I can do this. And I remember one of my friends, she's like, hey, you need to get busier quick. Like this is not working. And like thankfully I learned from itself and realized like the light switch relationships of like, oh my gosh, we found each other. We're going to spend all the time together and do this. I'm like, it's actually not a good thing. It's actually kind of like toxic traits in a lot of ways. But the more that you can have these like kind of slow burns and be like, I can see you once a week, maybe twice a week, maybe get like a midday coffee or a lunch and like ease into it is so much better.
I love
in
a
my
good
opinion.
slow burn.
Oh yeah. But I mean, I guess some quick advice for people. I mean, if someone's going through a hard time or going through a divorce, I mean, what kind of advice, are part of your initial, guidance or advice that you give to these people going through a hard time?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
As I knock everything over. I think, if you're going through a hard time and it's just like Kierstyn was talking about. We have that course, Should I Stay or Should I Go? Sometimes it's really good to reflect on some things and to really like take inventory of your relationship. Because, sometimes it can be, like if you look at it, it can be probably worked on. Sometimes it can't. Sometimes maybe you don't want to work on it, but taking that inventory and really evaluating your relationship and what you want in life and what your goals are and really taking a look at, what you want. On one hand, there's that. On the other hand, I just have to speak to it because we do deal with a lot of like abusive relationships. Yeah. That looks a little different. That sometimes requires some outside help, some safety planning, those kind of things to look at things to know whether you can get out of those relationships safely. But I tell people to start there. Like make your list, write it down. Don't just let it spin in your head. You got to anchor it to the paper. So once it's anchored to the paper, then you can really get a good idea of what your relationship looks like as a whole and what you really want.
And if you're actually divorced, it's over, you've made the decision. The first thing I would recommend doing is make sure you have good energy. So what I mean by that is like, I'm not like just saying crystals and things. I'm saying like, how much are you pouring into yourself? Because what happens is people often are extremely depleted at that point. So like they're not taking care of themselves. They've totally self-abandoned because they're so consumed in going through the divorce and, making that big decision. And so then they just kind of stay on that trend of being completely depleted, either overworking, over scrolling, over drinking, whatever, they numb. Right. Yeah. And so getting to a place where you're doing some of the basic self-care. Like, you don't need to overdo it. It doesn't need to be a Pinterest version of it, but good self-care, right? Generalized self-care. And then the next piece is you need to find out why you were there. Like, where did it come from? People just look at it and go, well, I'm out now. So, and I'm just like, not going to marry the same person, but then they do. And they're like, how did I end up with the same person or dating the same person?
And all of their friends are like,
yep. It's like written on the wall. Like, they even look alike. No, I'm just kidding. But like, for reals. But there's a part of it, you have to find why that was comfortable for you and why you were attracted to it. And I'm not saying you're responsible for what they did, but it's kind of like a dance. Like, we use this analogy all the time. You learn those once you've had a partner for so long. Those are the dance moves, so you tend to attract the same person doing the same thing, and because you're going to follow that same component. So why is that familiar to you? And you need to rewire it, and you need to look at how you're reacting, like what triggers you. You need to look at the trauma itself, because there is trauma there, and it doesn't always, I know people get mad that we overuse the word trauma. We might overuse it, but I also think we don't use it enough. I know that sounds really odd, but I don't think we use it properly. And like, it's amazing. Like, there's some people that come in, they're like, I thought for sure this was going to be like the pivotal thing. Like, I had this client who was like, it was when my brother threw grasshoppers on me and my mom didn't support me or back me. And I know that seems so small, but that's where it stemmed from. And then it built upon, because typically the other thing is these relationships are byproducts. And I know people don't always love that either, because they don't, then you have to open up this can of worms with your family, and you have to, and then that brings a lot of shame too. And sometimes they're like, well, that's my support system. So if I start looking at my parents, and they spiral, right? But it's not always about your parents. Can be human, unless there's like blatant abuse, right? That's a very different, like Tiffany said, like abuse is a very different but like, they're human. They're not going to do a perfect job. And there could be like epigenetic and general pieces. Like, there's so much to open up. You have to heal that part of you. You have to figure out why you ended up in that relationship. Yeah. So you don't repeat, and you don't self-abandon, and you can figure that out. That's how you become healthier. So that's where I would start. We have a book list too. Like, if you're just like starting to like poke around, it's it's just 10 books to read. And we have that linked on our Instagram, and people download that all the time and just kind of start there. And,
It's a lot of things to learn that you don't even know until you know. And like, because again, like, you've been operating in this world that you're probably the master of that, but like, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And if you don't understand your internal processes, if you're not educating yourself, then you're just going to, again, perpetuate what you know. Yeah. And like, one thing I always tell the people, of whether they're, in a bad relationship or they're trying to understand a relationship, I'm like, all right, take away all words, only actions. What's happening in this relationship? Is he just coming home from work and sitting on the couch and sitting on his phone for 12 hours, even though he says he's going to do the world and it's never once promised anything? Like, something to be thought of that. Yeah. And then secondly, the thing that I think of is, because I've seen so many people, again, like on the topic of repeating the things that you're used to and have done in the past, especially in relationships. One of the best things I did when I first found myself out of that relationship, and shout out homegirl Haley again, she's like, write your list of what you need in life after this, what you've learned from yourself and what that looks like. Because like, one thing I've seen a lot of people do is there's usually like, can be this one thing that they just wish that they were, whether it was a mentally healthy person or would sit next to him in church, or whatever that could be, and they will go hyper fixate on that, and they will go find it, but that they don't realize all of these other baggage that doesn't come with it, or these other things that do, and they're like, oh wait, I found myself from like the frying pan to the plate. And then thirdly, like, the dating in itself is one of the most personal things you can ever do, because whenever you find yourself in an issue, find yourself in a pattern, find yourself in a habit, it's your own behaviors, patterns, your own lures and bait that you're putting out. And so many of my times where I've been frustrated with dating, I'm like, hold on, what do I need to learn? What am I doing wrong? What am I doing this? And like, we'll have to take some tough medicine and swallow some big pills, but then it all comes back. And then, but again, like what we talked about is like knowing yourself and knowing where you are, who you are, what you stand for, your confidence. Like, then you know what you're going after. And it's not, if someone breaks up with you or says, I don't want to go on another date, it's this whole like dagger straight to the heart. It's like, oh yeah, like that's okay. Like, not everyone's for me, and I'm not for everyone. Right. But if you haven't done the work of who you are, what you want, and what you don't want, then like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's fun when, I'll text, I could go on a couple of days, like, hey, listen, like, this isn't for me. You're a great person. Like, see you around. I'm not like, let me know if you need anything. Have a good one. And like so many people are like, wait, what? Like, whoa, like you're not like mad at me? Like, no, like if like I'm not going to force you to be here. Like that's like the worst thing you could ever do is like trying to convince someone that they should be there. And like it's been this interesting cycle recently with that. I mean, it's because of the podcast where like I've had to put out my most authentic self in every part of my life. And it's like the first time I've ever been able to do that. And I've talked about it before, but there's this like flywheel that's happened in my life over this time where, I mean, the best thing you can ever be is who you are, which takes time to learn. But the more that you can do that, the better you become at it because you're already good at it. And we get better at the things that we're good at. And then when you put that out, then the right people start to see it and they come into your life. And the people who see it and are like, oh, I don't like this. Then they go out and then the right opportunities show up. And then it just creates this engine of like who you actually are and what you actually need. And everything starts to work out. And as I've embraced that part of my life and then come back in with dating, it's been interesting to be like, yeah. Like if you see, like, I know who I am. I know the values I have. I know my weaknesses that I have. And I could understand if you don't want this, but if like, I understand that there's a lot of people that do want this. And so I know how I'm going to be respected and wanted. And I want someone to want me. I don't want to have to try to sell myself every single day to someone that doesn't want this or has their own insecurities and battles and things that they need to put forward. And it's not always easy because like the more specific I get and the more particular I am, it's harder to find, but it does put me in a good place where it's like dating isn't this grind anymore. It's like, oh yeah, we can go and meet each other, have a good time and hang out and be like, oh, you know what, actually like, it was so nice to meet you. I hope you're the best. Let me know if I can help you, but you're not my like romantic partner.
You know what? You just said a question that you pose to yourself, like, what do I need to learn? I love that. I think that is like so insightful for you to be able to like ask yourself, you know, what am I learning from this? What do I need to do differently in my own body and my own self? So that was cool.
And I love that you started the podcast with this and, you know, hopefully it makes the cut. But it's one of my favorite quotes is that you can only meet somebody as deep as they've met themselves. You'll never meet them past that. And so when you do develop that deep relationship with yourself and you're authentic, spending time knowing you'll find who you're supposed to be with. And not just romantically, but just in life. Like the more you know you, the more you're like, and your circle might get smaller. But at the same time, like you'll have way more authentic relationships because when you're authentic, it creates that authenticity and you're safer versus like shut down, pretending, oh my gosh, it's, you know, and you're so consumed in that perception that you get lost in it. And I love what you said about dating because I think a lot of people have the mindset that dating has to be a grind and it's the worst. And because of the dating apps, everything's ruined now. And there's a component where I think people jump too soon. Sometimes they don't give it because it's too easy. Yeah.
Oh, I jumped.
It's
way too soon.
Yeah, but it's too easy to go back. It's just like they're like, oh, this is kind of hard, and then they go and like swipe again and try again, and they don't invest the time just to try to make it work with somebody. They're like, oh, you have one imperfection because it's such a balance, and it's such a wild west. Dating changed so quickly, and I still don't think people like we haven't caught up to it. We can't handle Instagram and like TikTok, and you know our brains really can't handle that. And now we've applied that same thing to dating.
Yeah,
and it's crazy. So I think that's why so many people suffer through it. But that's like a whole nother can of worms. I think I've said that a couple times. We could go so many different worms.
So many containers, so many insects. But I want to go back to a topic you're talking about like phrases that are used too much with trauma. But I think there's one also that it's one of my favorite books that I read post-divorce was The 8 Rules of Love with Jay Shetty. And so monk in India, learned from London, went to India to become a monk, and then has become who he is, podcasts, everything with there. But he put something into perspective that I like a lot on the topic of getting caught in these cycles of who you are and getting to know yourself. Because like when we think of karma in Western society, we think of bad things happen to bad people, good things happen to good people, and keep doing it. But in the actual context of karma, it's the cycles we find ourselves in. If we keep doing the same things, we keep having the same outcomes. And part of the goal of life from a Hindu perspective is to learn from all of those so we don't keep having the same outcomes to take us to our dharma, which is our purpose here in being alive, which could be, tagging up with your work bestie, and next thing you know, you're on a podcast. Or you could be putting hundreds of hours of yourself talking to other people on YouTube over the course of a year and a half. But everybody has their own purpose. And like, again, when I was going back kind of to the topic of like relationship with yourself, your partner's relationship with them and yours, each of you should have your own growth towards this dharma. Like you can help support someone with it, you can be there for them, but you can't do it for them. And so to realize that you're both of these individuals trying to do that, and also realizing like if you're banging your head against the wall, you don't like something, like look inside. There's something that you need to learn to grow, and you can either learn it and keep growing, or you can, again, go back to just banging your head against the wall.
Yeah. And I think too, when you're saying like, you mentioned getting to know like we were talking about kind of getting to know yourself, and you have to do that in order to figure out your dharma, right? Like you have to be connected to who you are, what you want, and what patterns you're doing and those type of things. And, you could also call that your subconscious. And I think a lot of people they have no idea what's going on. I think a lot of us live in autopilot, and you have to connect to that subconscious self to figure out those patterns and those cycles you're talking about. And if you can't identify what those things are, like when you get triggered and you kick on autopilot, or, you're numbing, or, you don't want to deal with those type of things, or how you're reacting, it's because those reactions are actually protecting, the trauma underneath, or the pain, or whatever it is. And if you're more worried, or that subconscious part feels so threatened, it'll take over. It's running the show.
Oh yeah.
So until your conscious and your subconscious can align, you're going to keep repeating those patterns. And that's specifically what we do, is help you align with those things and listen for those patterns and identify them with you so that you can move forward.
The me versus I.
Yes.
But I also, like, on the topic of dating apps, like, I think I was talking about this with Jennifer Yo from Soul on SLC, but she, like, one thing I believe in is, like, there's a lot of people who are just like, you know what? All right, let's fire up these apps every day. We're just going to swipe until I can't swipe anymore. And I'm just going to sit on my couch and wait for someone to message me about taking me out. We're going to fall hopelessly in love. And like,
no.
But like, if there's one thing I've learned a lot recently, it's nothing good happens at home. Like if you're just going to stay home all day, every day, nothing's going to come. Like no one's going to go knock on your door and be like, hey, are you looking to date someone that fits this exact profile? Are you looking for this job? Are you looking for this friend group? Like, get out of your house. Like Salt Lakes and like in Utah in general are amazing places for community, but you have to do a little work to find it. And so the more that you can get out and meet people in a natural environment, I mean, that's the way people want to be met. I mean, I can't think of the stat off the top of my head, but a staggering amount of women and men are waiting to be approached in public and in real life and have authentic interactions.
Right.
No one wants to be like, well, I swiped on an app for 6 months until something worked out. And so the more that you can put yourself out there and let the universe do its magic, better things are going to happen.
That's
I
true.
love that.
Yeah. And I have a client who gets caught up in just being on her phone the whole day on the dating apps. And so I've had her put some parameters on it. So she has like certain times of the day that she checks it. But what she has seen is because she has to fill that space, she has to go do something different. And so she's gotten out with her church and her community. And, it's been really good for her because, sitting on the apps and waiting for it to come.
And
isn't great.
And if you're addicted to like social, that's a whole nother dopamine hit. And also you feel rejected. And now there's like all these different things, like people feel like they have to be funny and they have to send you the perfect thing and they have to have the perfect profile, and they spend all this time doing those type of things and they just get so lost in it. And how you were talking about authenticity, being in person, you're going to be way more authentic, and you're going to see somebody, you're going to watch them, and you can see there's just so many different pieces to it. And I love that you pointed out community here. I think since COVID, people are just socially awkwardly weird in a lot of ways. Like, and I think they still are. And I think we set ourselves up, and I know this is like 4 or 5 years later almost, but I think we really set ourselves up for like separation, and we got comfortable there. Like I still feel sometimes I'm like, I'm kind of socially awkward. I do a lot of things on Zoom, and I never was. I was such a social butterfly person, but
I feel the same.
You get so into that, and like our whole job's on Zoom. Like Tiffany and I were when we were walking in, I'm like, how long has it been since I've seen you in person?
Been a while.
Because like it's just, but we live in that world, and so I love that you're talking about get out in community, be in these places. Like we were walking around like where you record and like talking about. I'm like, wow, like we miss our office because we shut that down because of COVID too. And so there's so many different pieces to that I think people are starting to get more into, in-person community. And maybe I'm a little slow but like jobs are on Zoom, like everything's on Zoom. My husband goes to his office like once a week to have social interaction. So, I think there is something about getting out.
Yeah, and that is a good reminder, I think, for people, because we do get caught up in just isolating and staying home. So
yeah, and you get comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, I've recorded, almost 85 episodes now, and not a single story person I've met has been like, and I did this without any sort of community help, friendship, not family, whatever. Like the stories of our lives are meant to be done with people. Like we are social creatures. And don't get me wrong, like we have those long weeks, we have those times where you want a night in, but like when it becomes Friday, Saturday night, Sunday during the day that all you're doing is sitting at home, like what, like take a step back. Like, is this helping you get to where you want to go? And also like, even like, and again, on the topic of like knowing yourself and what you want, like one thing that kind of bothers me is when a lot of people look at, I mean, I think it's guys that mostly do it, where it's like they look at women, it's like, oh, like you're only dating material. I'm like, no, like you can build a community of friends, and like just because you're not going to date them doesn't mean they don't exist anymore.
Right.
And like there's so many people that I've like, I mean, gone on dates and like, hey, listen, not there. Like, well, can we be friends? Like, I know you like to go to concerts a lot. I like to go to concerts. Let's go to concerts. I'm like, yeah, why not?
Sure.
And so I think just realizing of just building your community and the people that are around you, like everything will show up. And like that's why I prioritized wanting to do a lot more in-person events for the podcast, because that's what I've heard from so many people. They're like, I'm sick of going to the bars every weekend. I'm sick of dating apps. I'm sick of trying to make all of these things work and like not having a way to do it. Making friends as an adult, meeting romantic partners as an adult is hard, and you don't want to see your coworkers more than you have to.
Sure.
And so to provide those experiences to people where, again, like it's hard to put yourself out there, show up somewhere, whether alone or with someone, but like come hang out.
Yeah. And I love that because like for small business and, or large business, whatever, when you have this type of ambition and dream and mission, you're unique in a lot of ways. And a lot of people don't always understand that because you're also stepping out of kind of the social norm. And so creating those type of communities is so important in businesses. Like not everyone's going to understand. Like there's so many people that go, what do you do? Who are you? Did you go to school for that? Oh, you got certified? What does that mean? And they're so behind on like, the mental health's changed so much. There's great therapists and there's crappy therapists. There's great coaches and there's there's crappy coaches. And there's so many different ways things look. Things have changed. And there's kind of this box you live in, and you really have to step out and find your people and what you're passionate about. It's just like anything. So I love that you really talked about building that community. And I think it's awesome that you're doing the live events for podcasts, because I think you need that community in so many different ways.
Totally.
All right. And, if any of this resonated with you, if you're like, hey, I think that's me, or, oh, divorce, like there's more to it. Because I think a lot of people too, like they get divorced and then they're like later on, they're like, oh, like, and start showing up in their dating, like how you were talking about dating, and like how you were saying, like you alluded to divorce, and sometimes people don't openly talk about it. If you're kind of looking for that community, I think that's also something that we offer at the Relationship Recovery is people find a lot of community and support and not just great tools and resources, but we're two people to actually walk through it ourselves. Plus we have this community behind us, and now it's millions of people all over the world, and it's kind of crazy like how big it is when you look at it and how many people are listening. So if you're looking for that, you can go to our website and just use the code podcast, and you can have, we'll do half off your discovery call, and we can just, even if we're not for you, we can at least give you resources and tools that might be for you or put you in the right direction. So we always like to try to offer that when we do a podcast.
And we never let anybody walk away from those discovery calls without some really good, solid tools to, help them in their current situation. And I think it's just important to remember that healing and growth is not a destination, it's a journey, and it's just you always have to be working at it.
Exactly. No, thank you and appreciate that. Like it's a question a lot of people have. Everybody feels so alone, but when you realize you're not alone, this is something people have done before. People know how to help you get through it. It can be your community to help you grow and get over a really hard time in life and help you find your footing so it can become the best part of your life after that. Then I'm grateful for both of you, everything that you're doing. Keep rocking it. I'm excited. So if you guys could have someone on the Small Lake City podcast and hear more about their story and what they're up to, who would you want to hear from?
I would say FADV, which is Fight Against Domestic Violence.
Ooh, yeah.
They're really cool because they actually raise money to help all these different organizations. And they have it's actually statewide. It's not just FADV, but it's Dare Utah, and it's trying to bring more awareness around domestic violence and what it looks like. Because I don't think a lot of people realize what it looks like at all.
Yeah.
So they're doing some really cool things.
Yep. Yeah. And Brick would be really neat to have on. You'll love her.
Cool. No, I love bringing awareness to things, I mean, especially topics that people think they know what they know, but they really don't know everything that they should know.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people name things that happen as domestic violence. They always view it just the same way. They always, it has to be a physical altercation, and it looks so different than that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's actually happening a lot in dating right now, and people are not calling it what it is. Like we had a really deep discussion with a professor at the U, and just student after student coming in, like not calling rape, not calling domestic violence, because there's a socially acceptable piece to some of it right now. And so, yeah.
Well, and I think
there's
that's
a lot going on.
Yeah, that stigma silences us. It makes us quiet. And when we're quiet, it grows, in silence. And so I think having people share their stories and their experiences and stuff really brings it to the forefront so that, we can, do something about it.
Yeah. Solve a big problem that is unfortunately a part of the world we live in.
Yep. And Utah's one of the highest. And we don't talk about it enough because there is a little bit of that perfect culture. And so we like to, I think a lot of people stay longer because they're worried about how it looks.
Yep. So, and then lastly, if people want to follow you on social or follow the podcast or get more information, where's the best place to find that?
You can follow us on all things social media at The Relationship Recovery, and you can go to therelationshiprecovery.com to learn more about what we do and what we offer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Kierstyn, Tiffany, it's been amazing. Thank you so much. Everybody go check it out. Use code podcast, get a half off consultation because there's so much to learn. Life is worth it. Life is worth living, not living uptight in the words of Jay-Z. So,
Amen.
And sometimes it's yourself getting in the way and you don't even know why it is.
Love it.
No, thanks guys.
You're awesome.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Salt Lake City Podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, review, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends. And we'll catch you next week. We'll see you there.